Let's talk money now. Personal consumption expenditures, PCE is what they call it. That's a key number, personal consumption numbers, for the Federal Reserve that uses it to measure inflation. And that number, personal consumption expenditures, rose at its fastest pace in more than 40 years. All this comes on the heels of yesterday's GDP report, gross domestic product. That's how much the economy grew. And it turned out the economy shrank again for the second quarter in a row. And that is at least one way of defining a recession. So for more on all this, let's bring in ABC News business reporter Alexis Christophorous. So Alexis, that PCE index rose 6.8% in June. Translate that for people. What does that mean? And it's said that it is the fastest acceleration in that number in 40 years. What does the Fed look at in that number?
Well, that is, Terry, the preferred method of measuring inflation that the Federal Reserve uses. It comes out monthly by the government. It's compiled by the government, and it basically measures and tracks changes in the price of consumer goods over a period of time. And this last one showed that consumer prices up 6.8% in June versus a year earlier. Once again, led higher by fuel prices. They were up 43% in the past year, a big reason why inflation is so high. Food prices gaining 11%. One encouraging sign, prices or price increases for big ticket items like appliances and cars didn't rise as fast. That's a little bit of good news and perhaps a sign that supply chains are starting to ease a little bit. But overall, the takeaway from this report, Terry, is that inflation remains stubbornly high. It is broad-based and it is not going away anytime soon.
Yeah, so fasten your seatbelts for more rate hikes, as you've been telling us. Right. And on the other side of the equation, there are numbers out today that show that wages and benefits also increased. That should be good news, right? 1.3% in the second quarter. What does the Fed, what do economists and business people make of that number? Well,
yeah, I mean, wages still increasing at the fastest pace on record right now. And that is good news. We have more Americans working and more Americans, making more at those jobs. Wages continue to go up, and that is an expense for businesses. The problem with higher wages is it can be inflationary. It just adds more upward pressure on prices, so becomes this sort of vicious cycle that occurs. Companies spent 5.1% more on compensation for workers in the second quarter compared to the same time a year ago. And you know what that means? Unfortunately, a lot of companies pay for those higher wages by pushing that extra cost onto consumers, which means prices may be continuing to rise.
And the rule of thumb is that the prices are going to rise faster than the wages, is what often happens. But in this kind of cycle.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you about that big deal that Senator Joe Manchin announced with Senator Chuck Schumer, the Democratic Majority Leader, on a spending package, big spending package to tackle inflation and climate change, lower the deficit, raise taxes in some ways. How do you think, here are the details there, $370 billion for energy and climate initiatives, Medicare negotiating prescription drug prices, extending Obamacare subsidies, and taxing big corporations and the wealthy. Does this, how is the business community looking at this deal, which is far from being law? Would it help the economy and bring down inflation?
Yeah, I mean, they're billing this as the Inflation Reduction Act. I think the jury is still out on whether or not it's really going to reduce inflation. You have a few things in here that could, over the long term, reduce overall inflation. You've got some tax increases, lower drug prices, definitely would be good news for Americans, all aimed at reducing the federal budget deficit over time. Raising corporate taxes, you can bet some of the business world not loving that and believing that that could be an inopportune, now is an inopportune time to do something like that when businesses already are faced with higher prices.
Right, it's a great point. That they named it the Inflation Reduction Act. The jury's out on that. I'm calling the Chicago Bears a Super Bowl contender this year, but the jury's way out of that. Alexis, as always, thanks very much.
Thanks, Terry.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.